Lust and Deceit, this sermon's rated R. And I didn't want them to be here for this sermon, and I know that they don't hear everything in the back. So we have a certificate of debt that we've been working on since Lent started. I hope you still have yours. If you don't have one, Kim has them over here, and please see her after service. We are working and continuing our Lenten series on sin, and I'll remind you to bring back that certificate of debt back into worship on Easter morning. That way there we can complete the whole understanding of what we're doing with this idea of sin. So if you're a visitor, please make sure you stop over there to see Kim today, and that way you can have one. So we've all read biographies. We write a biography of ourselves before we come into council, and then that way you know who we are, where we're coming from, and all that stuff. I had to write a biography, or not a biography, but a bio on my time as a pastor before I got called to the church. And then when we became Epiphany, I had to write another bio for the website. And we all have had bios, right? We all do those. But the bios in the magazines that we read tell stories about individuals in their life. Most of the time, unlike the books and magazines, most of the time these books and magazines are well done for the accomplishments of the person and lifting that person up. They most often highlight the best of the person, the best men and women. And that way there, everyone knows that they are really good. The Bible, on the other hand, the best men and women in the Bible had their faults and failures. And this is no different for David. This is no different for a lot of the people in the Bible. They all have faults and failures, just as we do. The difference is we don't write down our faults and failures. We don't tell people what we did when we were younger or how we acted or behaved. Oh, but the Bible doesn't give any credence for that. They write everything down in Scripture. It's not hidden. And when people tell me that the Bible is just a simple story, there's nothing really interesting in it, I said, oh, there's all kinds of interesting things in the Bible. All kinds of stuff. Today we talk about sex, lust, deceit, greed, entitlement. It's all there. It's in that Scripture that was read. But let me just tell you a couple more. Noah was a man of faith and obedient, and yet he got drunk and lost God's favor. Twice, Abraham lied about his wife, saying that she was his sister to save his life. Twice, not once, but twice. To the point where one of the kings wanted to lay with his sister, and he would have let that happen. But God intervened. Jacob lied to both his father, Isaac, and his brother Esau. Moses lost his temper when he struck the rock. And Peter lost his courage and denied Jesus 3 times. Oh, it's all there if you want to pick it up and read it. It's all there. In our reading today from 2 Samuel chapter 11 and 12, we heard about King David's sin, his inability to close the door on his lust of another man's wife. David committed adultery, deceit, and eventually murder. All for, what's that understanding of that? 15 minutes of fame. Now, Pastor Wargo warned us about not using God's name in vain last week. He even spoke about how we grow up and learn more about our faith and what it means to call upon God's name as an adult instead of an adolescent. He said when you're an adolescent, you can get away with things because you don't understand everything. But as an adult, you do understand. I was glad he brought it up, that adolescent, because I remember in my days as an adolescent, I was thinking to myself, man, I did that all the time. It was not pretty, right? We have to admit our sin. I wasn't born a pastor. And I wasn't born perfect. So I sin just like you do. I sin just like you do. On this subject today, we and I mean everyone, including those who are listening on YouTube or Facebook, everyone here listening knows that as an adolescent, we know we lusted and did wrong. We lusted and did wrong. When I was talking to people in premarital counseling, I talk to them and I'll ask them this question. What first drew you to your husband or your wife? What was the draw for you? You know, and I listened to them. Oh, I could see he had such a wonderful smile. He looked so nice. Oh, I just loved the way she looked at me. Her eyes were just glowing as she looked at me. I'm thinking to myself, you fell in love because her eyes were glowing and you looked at him? No. The first thing that draws us to the other person, if we're going to be truly honest, and let's be honest with it, is what they look like. Are they attracted to you? And are you attracted to them? It's not because you know their personality. You've never met them before. You get to know their personality. It's about their sexuality. That's what draws you to them. And I tell young people all the time, that is, that Jerry Maguire show. He completes me. She completes me. I don't want to hear he completes me or she completes me. After 20 years, you might be able to say that. But you just met each other. Now, you've been dating for a while, and it all works out pretty good. But let's talk about this adolescent understanding of lust. Because we do it. It doesn't mean that we live in sin as an adult today, but sometimes people do. Now, I'm going to talk about something that every guy in here knows as an early teenager. Penthouse, Playboy, and many other horrible magazines. Today, you don't have to worry about it. Today, you're not going to find a magazine. You're going to go on the internet. And I've helped many young boys that get addicted to pornography on the computer. It's not something that you just go into and start looking at and think you're going to get away from it. It is a danger in our life and in our social fabric. And you can sit and say, Pastor, I never looked at those things. Oh, yeah, right. Sure. I remember my brother, I was telling Ken in the back, I remember my brother coming home from Guam. He had a deck of cards, 52 cards. So we were playing cards, he's dealing them out. I got 4 brothers, right? So we're all sitting around the table, we're playing cards. I flip my cards up, it's naked women. A whole deck of naked women. And he started laughing. He goes, I thought that might get you fun. I said, yeah, where'd you get these at? Oh, I got them in Guam. And then another time, I was helping a friend move. This was when I was off to college. Helping a friend move, and I get this trunk, and I'm thinking to myself, man, this trunk is heavy. It took 2 of us to pick it up. So right away, I said, what do you got in this trunk? He goes, books. I'm thinking, oh man, don't tell me you're packing these books all through this place and you're going to take them to college with you. It was books on HBO guides. So I thought. But when you take the top layer off, because his mom would find those other books, all underneath of those HBO guides, about that full of HBO guides, and about that full of smut magazines. They're the problem in that household, and he had it. Every guy in here knows that has happened. Even Sports Illustrated got into selling sex as they did the swimsuit issue. In fact, they went as far as painting the swimsuits on the girls. But most guys that I knew read it for the articles. And somewhere along the line, somewhere along the way, it became the norm, and it became socially acceptable to see sex, have sex, view sex, have anything you want to do as long as it's fine for you and for your partner. It's not okay. It's not okay. And it's not okay today. It became so normalized that Victoria's Secrets came out with a brand of clothing an entire brand of underwear and lingerie called Angel Brand. Now, I know about this product because I saw the magazines with it all in it. I know about this product because one of my dear friends, his son was in television, and he had to videotape the entire process. He was, from the beginning to the end, doing the documentary on these Victoria's Secret women, or girls, walking up and down the runway in lingerie. And he gave a copy of the VHS tape. He made a copy of the VHS tape for his father. And I said to him, did your wife find that tape? And he goes, oh yeah. He goes, but our son made it, so she wasn't too upset with me. And I said to him, so what'd you do with the tape? Well, I don't have that tape anymore. It's gone. But here we understand what they're doing. Sex sells. But it also delivers us into sin. Not just simple, easygoing, what is sin? I'm not saying it like that. I'm saying it delivers us into a sin that we can't get out of because sometimes we're so encompassed in it, or ingrained in it. It's becomes so much of our life that we can't get away from it, and that's where it becomes addictive. David's temptation and sin illustrates the truth of the book of James, chapter 1, verse 14 through 15. But each one is tempted when he has drawn away by his own desires and enticed. Then, when his desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is fully grown, brings forth death. Whatever the cause, good or bad, that kept David in Jerusalem instead of visiting the troops in battle, an author wrote this: Satan finds some mischief still for idle hands to do. Idleness isn't just a lack of activity. It can be a lack of spirituality, a lack of discipline for the mind and body. Like David, we lay aside our armor. We take the first step toward moral defeat. Each one of us, every time we allow lust or deceit to take hold of us. We walk that fine line, just as David did. Without the helmet of salvation, we don't think that we can survive. We don't think the way that a saved person would think. David lay aside his armor that day. Instead of taking the steps toward his men and going out of Jerusalem and doing something that he should have been doing, he stayed at home and let himself fall into a position of lust. And it wasn't just the lust that got to him. It was his own pride of thinking he can do whatever he wants, anything he wants, because he's king. Now, I want to tell you that the king of Israel has a rule over all of Israel. If the king of Israel wants you to do something that goes against God, it does not have to be done. You are not required to do it as a citizen under the king. If it goes against the rules of God, then it shouldn't be done. And what was one of the rules of God? Do not commit adultery. Do not commit murder. Do not lie and steal. Do not covet. Oh my gosh, how many rules did David break? How many rules do we break? So he laid aside this understanding. In Ephesians 6:10 through 18, it talks about this. Without that helmet of salvation, you cannot be saved. Without the breastplate of righteousness, we have nothing to protect our hearts. Without the girdle of truth, we can easily believe a lie that's being told to us, even from ourselves. And we are the worst at lying to ourselves. We are the worst because we will believe our lie. And we will continue to believe our lie to the point where we start telling people that it is the truth, even though we know it is not. David did that same thing. He lived in that lie and pretended it never happened. Without the sword of the word and the shield of faith, we are helpless against the enemy. without prayer, we have no power. We have no power. This sin that I talk about isn't just David's sin, it's our sin. I'll bet you can look back and you can find out where you were just as David was, whether you're a man or a woman. We all know that we've seen beautiful women come into our line of sight. I had a story a long time ago of a pastor, a friend of mine, that was giving communion, and a woman was wearing a very revealing top, and he kept wanting to change lines with me. He kept saying, let me over here. Switch with me. Switch with me. Switch with me. I couldn't figure out what he was doing. Now, I knew most of the congregation, and most of the moms were in my confirmation class with all their kids, because we had about 140 kids in confirmation. And so, as this person getting closer, I get this elbow on my side, switch places. And then all of a sudden, she comes forward, I give her communion, she walks away. We get up we're sitting on the chancel, and he says to me, literally, that was one heck of a body of Christ. That is lust. And it happened right in the church. When we start thinking that way, that it's okay, you can have a glance, and you can say, oh, that's a very pretty woman. And girls, don't think you're immune to it, because you're looking around going, oh, that's a good-looking guy. If your vision is there and you take a glance, but then all of a sudden you stop and you start going, there's a problem. And it's your problem, because you're lusting over something that you should not be lusting over. You've experienced the same as you're going through it. It's not appropriate, and it is sin. Unless you deliberately linger, like I just showed you, to satisfy and feed your lusting desire, Jesus would say to yourself, but as for myself, I'm saying to you, everyone who is looking at a woman, you can put man in there too, ladies, in order to indulge his or her sexual passion for themselves, has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Already committed adultery in his heart. And if you're not married, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Because you're not supposed to be laying with everybody in the block, right? There was a young lady in Ohio that I spoke with that needed help. She needed help because she felt unloved. And one of the things that was happening was people would come into her life, she would move in with them, and then they would leave her. And this happened continuously. John would move out today, and Bob would move in tomorrow. Is that appropriate? No, it's not. And in God's eyes, it's sinful. So, we did an intervention for her. And I got her partners, other women that she could call upon when she was feeling that need of security, need of love. And eventually, about 2 years later, she met a man who was actually genuinely caring for her. And they got married. And they began to have a family. And she was blessed because she got away from a life where it was a revolving door, life partners, into a life with one man in her life and her children. Sometimes you have to step in and help, but other times you stand back and you watch. When you watch, it becomes a problem for you as well as the other person, because maybe they're so deep in it, they believe the lie so well that they can't see the sin that they're creating, not only for them, but for the person that they're with or their families. Once David sent the messenger to find out who that woman was, he was possessed. And she was too. He possessed her. It was no longer just a matter of interest. It was truly a desire that burned so badly that David didn't think of the consequences of his actions or what God would think about him. He didn't care anymore. And when Nathan came to him and talked to him about what this man did, the man that murdered the baby sheep, the ewe, David burned with anger. And then Nathan points at him and says, you're that man. You're that man. You're the one who did this. Are we that person too? Are you that person? Those listening online, are you that person? There's consequences to our action. Hollywood movies glorify this behavior, unfortunately. We see all the time. I can't stand to watch some of these movies, so I fast forward through scenes that I don't want to see. I can tell what's going to happen, and I just start fast forwarding. When my kids were in the house and we were watching TV, if they started doing something I didn't think was appropriate, the TV went off. I don't need to see that on TV. My kids don't need to see it on TV. They see it enough in high school and junior high. And then in college, they're pressured to do all kinds of things. So I'm not going to let them grow up in a house where I'm watching sex on TV. Hollywood glorifies this behavior. Famous people admit that they have been unfaithful to their spouses like they were picking something off the menu at a restaurant. David had 6 other wives. Did he need another one? No. But what got to him? Sin. We see it all around us, but no one speaks against it or speaks to their friends about their actions. In the military, I watched many of my friends struggle because they were deployed and they came home and they didn't know what was going on. Their spouse was not their spouse anymore. The spouse had met someone else while they were deployed. It was sad. I've seen very faithful husbands and wives make it through all those things, and then I've seen others that could not. In seminary, I had my Corvette down there, 2 of them actually. And then I had the Corvette, and I drove it to the seminary one day. I had the T-tops down. I pulled in the parking lot, got my rock and roll going. Good old classic rock, too. And one of the young seminary students comes up to me, and she leans in my car and says, "You going to take me for a ride?" And I looked at her and I said, "No, I'm not. That seat right there is reserved for my wife, and that's the only woman that's going to sit in it." I got out of the car, shut the door, and she just stood there looking at me like, "I can't believe you turned me down." But yes, we have to do that. You have to have the strength. See, David left the armor of God somewhere else. He didn't close the door on the sin of lust. I had a friend of mine in seminary, no longer a friend because he got mad at me, because he came over to my house and I told him he was an alcoholic. I said, "You need help." And he goes, how do you know I need help? I said, "Because you drink too much and you spend $1,000 on a stripper." And he goes, "How'd you know that?" And I said, "Because your wife called me crying, and I'm trying to help you." It took 2 years later, he couldn't finish seminary, so he took 2 years off and then went back and got his degree. But in that 2 years, he went for help. He found help, and he became a better person. No longer drinking, no longer worried about pornography, and of course, not going to strip clubs. Another one of those seminarians that I was with was taking girls out every week and sleeping with them. Not appropriate. Having sex before marriage, not appropriate. Especially when you're picking someone up one week and then you're getting rid of them and picking up another person and getting rid of that person. And when I approached him about it, I said, "David, what are you doing? How are you doing this? Why would you do this?" "I'm not a pastor yet." And I said to him, "You received a call from God to come to seminary to be a pastor. You are a pastor once you have accepted that call to God. Whether you like it or not, you're held accountable as a pastor would be held." And he understood what I was saying. Closer to home, I walked into my wife's office one day, and Wanda was at the counter trying to get rid of some guy. And I heard her very strongly say, "I'm married." And she showed this guy the wedding rings. And he said, "That doesn't bother me any." That's the world we live in today. That's the problem we have today. This lust and deceit and lying and cheating is all about self-gratification for that one person. The sin that we live with, the sin that we have to fight, isn't easy. And I encourage you to help others win the battle against it, because it's not easy. This world we live in has more of that than morality. You will find more and more problems in relationships because of this situation that David was in and Bathsheba was in. You'll find more and more problems in relationships because of lust and deceit. So you might be able to deceive yourself, but you cannot deceive God. So I encourage you, stand up for what you know is right and keep the armor of God on you all the time. For sin is just a doorway away. Amen.